so many platforms now that are out there that have a doorway or a window to access a student. You may think they're just online playing a game, but there's a doorway that someone else can go through to chat, to invite, to like or friend. And what that really creates is a connection between somebody that you don't know and your child. So I think one of the first steps is really knowing what platforms is your child on and which ones have access to other people. That's a starting point.
Hello and welcome to our Smart Social Superintendent Spotlight, where we feature incredible district leaders to address some very hot topic questions we receive from parents across the country. Hi, I'm Andrea Allen with Smart Social, and it is our mission to help parents keep their children safe and successful online. Today, we are honored to have with us Superintendent Jane Stavem from Sioux Falls School District 49-5.
Hi, I'm Jane Stavem. I am the superintendent of the Sioux Falls School District here in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. We're a district
Right.
of about 25,000 students. We have 24 going on 25 elementary schools. We have 6 comprehensive middle schools, 4 high schools, and a career academy. Happy to be on the podcast.
Thank you so much for joining us here today, Jane.
Thank you for having me.
Today, we are going to cover some of those topics and questions parents are asking us and have you, Superintendent, share with us your insights and your learnings so together we can build resilient kids that are safe. What are your tips that parents can do to better manage screen time at home?
Well, I think there's a lot of things. And, when we think about screen time, that used to mean one thing. It was maybe just the computer screen, and now it's phone screens and iPads and Kindles and so many different options. At the heart of it is a parent knowing that they can have a say in that screen time. I think sometimes parents feel kind of powerless, maybe to set those limits. So the first thing is you are the parent. You do need to set those limits. The second thing really is identifying the purpose for the screen time. Does your child like gaming? Are they on screen time maybe more than they should be just with homework or interest based things? Or do they just tend to go down the rabbit hole of videos? And then working backwards from there to say, is the activity itself okay and we just need less time on the screen? Or is the activity itself maybe risky and so we need to do some other kinds of limits? Then it's just some really practical things. And I think a lot of times parents aren't aware of just the basic tools that are available to them to use, that they can either install some apps or some software or just the privileges that they already have maybe built right into that device that allow it to just be turned off at a consistent time every day. I think the consistency is a really big factor too. If you decide on a number of minutes or the time of day, or what your child is able to access, that you make that really visible. You go over those expectations, but then you stay really consistent with those because once those boundaries start to move, that's when we start to kind of fudge a little bit and maybe not be as consistent.
Love that advice. That consistency really is key in connecting and managing with your kids. Thank you. So we have another question, which is what advice do you have for parents and students to help students use social media in a positive way so they can get the best job and career and college opportunities?
Well, there's so many places out there now that kids post things about themselves, and really narrowing down what's the purpose of each of those platforms, I think is really important. Sometimes it's as much what we don't have them post as what we do want them to post. But I think you see a few different things emerging. I know right now on LinkedIn, you'll see more and more students who are kind of setting up that basic profile that we typically see with adults. But now they're starting to list internships or jobs that they have long before they're in that professional workforce. I also think some of the other social media platforms are great for showing what jobs they have. If they're doing some work for a business that they work for, can they grab a little clip of them showing customer service or showing some of the things that they know they're interested in doing later in their career? You can also grab clips from your school social media accounts. We did a really great video series on some of our career pathways. And so those videos are out there of students that were part of that work that they can then repost to their platforms. show them in those programs, show them what they're learning. I also think our career and college opportunities are always looking at students who really have that well rounded version of a school career. So, what activities were they in, and where can they showcase what they were involved in, and how that then sets them up to just be a good human being and have some of those social skills that people are looking for. Meeting and greeting people, having a solid presence online just feeds that perception that this person is someday going to really add value to what we do as a business. And the more that you can show your confidence, if you're an entrepreneur, if you're getting some good job experience, put that out there in as many platforms as you can.
Such great advice. And I love what you're doing with your school and that you're able to share access so that they can use those positive experiences on your school to their own social media platforms and putting it out into the world. That's really neat. We have this specific question just came in from a parent, and we would love to get your thoughts. Do you have any recommendation for parents on phone social media access for students in elementary school, middle school, and high school?
Well, hold off as long as you possibly can. I think that's one of the things that I would say. And I think it's actually gaining some traction with parents. We've kind of come through a time where some of the technology hit so fast and kids wanted phones and they put the pressure on their parents. And now we've got some data behind that. And we know some of the negatives as well as some of the positives. I think one of the hardest things is you look at the device of a phone and it's hard to determine what you want to do because that's a safety device and a risk all in one device. And I think it's harder than ever because you can't extricate those two things from one device. But I think you have to think about what are you doing to set limits on that? If you give your child a phone, how can you lock that down to just the basic necessities so that they can call a few trusted adults? There are some new devices that are just coming on the market that allow you to really narrow that in. Setting those time limits that we talked about a minute ago is really important. And I just heard a really great suggestion from a parent this week. She said, when it hits 7 o'clock in our home, everybody knows, adults included, that they all go onto this charging station. It's visible to everybody right in the kitchen, and everybody does it. What I think can be hard is if parents are still on their phones and kids aren't, it looks kind of inconsistent maybe. If you allow an older child but not a younger child and they still see that. So again, that consistency factor. But when everybody does it together, that also allows you to do some other activities together. And I think we have to think about if we're going to limit a student's access on their phone, then what else are we going to do? What can we do as a family? What activities can we encourage? How do we just set up good habits for studying and for reading a book at home? And sometimes we expect that kids can just do that on their own. And sometimes we have to go back and retrain or provide those other alternatives so that those become the norm rather than just sitting on your phone. The other thing that I think is really important is if parents can do that with 4 or 5 other parents of their child's friends, then you don't have that pull. Well, all my friends are, on their phones and I'm not, I'm missing out. If you get a good critical mass of a group of friends and everybody's kind of doing that, then that just becomes the thing. And it's much easier to do when you're doing it and you're not all by yourself.
Such great takeaways. And I think that last one was really important. And I know here at Smart Social, we try to create a very informed parent, and that one very informed parent can make a difference in their community, in that small little group of friends, and spread out and really help create a community that is knowledgeable of why and put those little practices in place so that they together can be on the same page. And that makes it so much easier for those kids, doesn't it? When their
Absolutely.
kids have the same things, 7 o'clock, that's when I put my phone
Yep,
down. Oh, you too? Okay, we've got this, right? So
that's great.
thank you for that. I'm going to share with you and everyone watching just a little taste of what our live events and some of the content that we put out here. We answer parents' questions. That's what we do here. And we love to use videos and real people, experts, and even students to answer some of these questions. So, this question, what makes these apps These video apps is what we're talking about. So addictive. Let's hear from a couple students.
I think the most addictive part about social media is the constant new content that you see. You're always being introduced to new content, especially on apps like TikTok. I think the short videos, when they end so quick, you start to lose your ability to have a longer attention span. I've caught myself finding long TikTok videos and I can't stand watching the whole thing.
This generation really adapted to the fact that we don't have a large attention span. We really only concentrate for 30 seconds. So getting information that quickly, I think, enables us to just want to keep watching more. You don't even need to care about what they're presenting to you, but just the fact that you can sit there and watch it and you're oddly enjoying it. Social media is pretty addictive. People said it's like a drug. So it is addictive because you can't stop watching it. Your mind just plays on loop and it enjoys the fulfillment of everything firing in your brain to just keep watching.
These kids, they know how addictive it is, I think, on some level. And yet, I guess some kids know and some don't. But, these reasons why they can't stop watching some of these videos, that constant new content, they trained to have the short attention span, your mind telling you not to stop. Are you also seeing the superintendent, this addiction to the video apps?
Absolutely. And it's not just students. I mean, I think that's our primary concern is they're still developing their habits and their brains are developing. But it's a couple of things I think that was said in the video. It's content and it may be great content that they're interested in. If you start watching videos about pets or training your pet, you just kind of get caught, or the superhuman pet tricks. And then there's so many rabbit holes to go down. And then you almost feel like, you have to complete it or you've missed out on something. And the other thing that I think is always fascinating is it doesn't stop and give you a choice to start the next one. It just rolls. And so there is no stopping unless you stop it. And I think that's fascinating how that's been plugged into just what the feed continues to be. The other thing that was mentioned there was the attention span. And she said, even when it's a longer TikTok now, I can't force myself to do that. And I think we see that progression happening when we ask kids to attend to a task or read a book for a sustained amount of time. And so anytime a parent can work through that struggle, we call it productive struggle with a student to help them see that they still can persist, even when that may not be their norm. It's important to do that because it's a confidence builder. And I think it also does somewhat of a reset so that they say, oh, yes, I am still capable of this. And when I'm interested in this, maybe it doesn't move at the same pace, but it still captures my interest and it involves me rather than just being an observer. I'm also a participant. We have to help kids participate and not just watch what's happening on a screen.
I love that piece about participating and helping them know the difference, right, of that experience and the value that they can take away from that. Thank you. Let's watch one more video here. Parents are asking us, is social media positive or negative for my child? Let's hear what another student has to say.
Part of what makes social media so addictive is how the algorithms are based on using content to judge whether or not someone's worthy and using people's short attention spans to evaluate them as pieces of code, which also means that social media doesn't really care about your opinion, but really what keeps you on that platform longer, whether that's from likes, comments of engagement, sharing it to other people, or even just watching it through. The algorithm judges you as a piece of data and whether or not someone should be praised for being controversial or thrown away for not being exciting enough, even if they're pouring their heart and soul into the content. It is a heartless beast. When I spend too much time on social media, that can look like being happy because something really cool happened in my friend's life. They went hiking. A friend of mine saw snow for the first time a couple of days ago, and it can make me feel really happy and energized. But other times, it can just be really draining. It can be really negative. It depends who I'm following. It depends what's being posted.
I think that's what you hit on, superintendent, was that there's those positives that way to shine and the negatives. And really, I think you spoke to kind of understanding the difference between the two and some tools and ways to help, educate our kids and how to address those. So just wanted to share, anyone watching here, if you want to learn more about smartsocial.com's programs, where we help parents become informed and educated on how to keep their kids safe and successful online. We share our weekly live parent events and replays covering all kinds of topics, teen-led videos and lessons, and parent newsletters. What educators are saying, we had 50 social media incidents per last year. Now we are down to 5 incidents, and I have more time to be a school principal. We also have someone saying the 50 plus live events give our community a chance to join on their phones without software, a date time that works with their schedule, and there's a replay. Another superintendent said we can't stay updated on all of the latest apps, so we appreciate Smart Social. They keep our 8,000 parents in the know. Again, we have these live events throughout the year on specific topics our parents are asking for, including AI, bullying, how to shine online, of just a few. And we have amazing, more than 200 parent feedback that is just so positive and keeps us as a company going and excited. All right, back to you, Superintendent. Let's answer another question. And this is a more serious one: avoiding strangers and dangerous situations online. What is your advice to parents and students to avoid talking to strangers and avoiding dangerous situations online?
Well, in that last video, I think what I was thinking about there is just the level of sophistication that exists that so many people aren't aware of. And so many platforms now that are out there that have a doorway or a window to access a student. You may think they're just online playing a game, but there's a doorway that someone else can go through to chat, to invite, to like or friend. And what that really creates is a connection between somebody that you don't know and your child. So I think one of the first steps is really knowing what platforms is your child on and which ones have access to other people. That's a starting point. And then I think it's letting them know of some of those common ways that first kind of touch point is done. If it's an email that a student gets or a child gets that says, "Hey, I saw you were doing this thing. Do you want to be part of our group?" And, just some of those weird things that if people can access your email, they can get that window in. Also in chats or with other kids that their children may be playing online with, do they have the window that others have already come through? And now is it extending that to your child? Do they know the identities of the people who are in that group, or are they all hidden and you have no idea who it is? Is it a 40-year-old male in another state, or is it a 12-year-old female who lives a block away? You really need to know who's interacting online. Again, I just talked to a parent about this recently, and they said, we're now hosting these gaming events with our kids, and we can go in and preview who's on there. We don't just leave them in the basement to game for a couple of hours. We check in about every 15 minutes. Then they can see if somebody's appeared on video or if there are more players that have come in. The other thing is through some of those other social media platforms is really knowing who your child is communicating. And again, setting as many of those controls as you can on their apps, their phone, their access, your network as a home, so that you've got things tightened down as much as you possibly can. And then just be diligent. Don't do it once, do it multiple times. Do check-ins, do checkups, all of those things with your child's device as well as your own.
Thank you, Superintendent. It is scary to see, what these kids have access to. I love how you talked about a window and just read and defining, who is a stranger and who is, someone I can trust when your child is having those relationships online. So thank you. Let's jump to the next question. And that is kind of what you talked about a little bit here, which is the video games. So what is your advice to parents and teens about video game safety and managing video game screen time?
Well, I was thinking about this from my last response. I was going to add on, and now you gave me the perfect question. And that's really, what is the age level of your child? What grade level are they in? What's their ability to discern for themselves? And where do you still need to be in primary teaching mode? So, managing a first grader who wants to do some gaming that involves a web connection, that needs to be very highly supervised by that parent. A fifth or sixth grader, maybe you can loosen up just a little bit. but you're still monitoring their time online. You're making sure they're not going to other sites and doing things that maybe kids do when they get a little older and a little more sophisticated. And if they're in high school, you're trying to help them set healthy habits for themselves as they transition into adulthood. And to do that, you may need to talk with them when they're not gaming. I don't know of any child who wants to stop what they're doing and talk to somebody while they're in the middle of it. So, look for the right time and do that when they're not right in the thick of it. But then really talk about what are some of the other things that need to occupy your time, and are you giving too much to this and not feeding those other things in your life that really help you form those healthy habits? But again, I'm going to go back to limit it at the very beginning, because every time you allow a little bit more to happen, the harder it's going to be to pull back on that at some point. And so make sure as you allow things that you really want to live with that for a while.
Great advice. And I think, you talked about they don't want to be disturbed while they're playing. And one great way is play with them, right?
Very, very much so, if you can take it. I remember playing a car racing game with my son back in the day, and I got so car sick from all of the twists and turns. I thought, I'm not sure this is the game for me. Maybe their dad's going to have to take this one. Uh,
Well, I bet he still appreciated that you tried, right? You ask about it, right? You get excited about it, or you get excited about what they're excited about. Okay, we have another question, screen time and motivation. What is your advice to parents about the impact of screen time on motivation for homework, chores, and other important tasks for teens to be successful?
That's a tricky one. And, as a school district, we talk about that in partnership with what parents are trying to do. All of us have invested in devices for students, knowing that the digital world is just part of how we do most things now. And so, how do we provide good guidance during the school day that then can also translate to what we ask students to do at night when they're at home for homework or research or writing a paper, whatever that might be? So, I think when you think about motivation, to me, we have to kind of move beyond that. I do homework, I get games, to more sophisticated things like maybe a way to earn some of the different things that you're trying to earn. And maybe you have an app that some of your time on task, completed chores also equate to some type of incentive. Or there's some great apps out there where those chores can even be monetarily incentivized. You can set the amount, but it's kind of translating that work real world scenario to benefiting you in the home. Some parents don't feel like that's a great option. And so I just think there's some other ways then that you can incentivize, but distinguishing between the two now is a little bit harder. The motivation also may just be that you give them some free time and they get a choice. Maybe you have some things pretty well regulated, and that's the time where you let them get on and kind of do some of those things that they want to do. I think this one's a really hard one, because I think that line between what once was a real motivator and a reward or an incentive now is just a core part of what they do. And so that's a little bit more nuanced than I think it was at one point.
Absolutely. It is. Those lines are all intertwined at this
Word.
point, right? Well, we want to thank you, Superintendent. And again, just share for those of you watching, please check us out at smartsocial.com to understand more about our programs, our weekly live current events and replays, teen-led videos, and premium parent newsletter. Superintendent, we appreciate your thoughts and bringing your wisdom to us here. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. To learn more, visit us at smartsocial.com. Thanks for joining us. See you next time.